What if Deku was a Firebender? Chapter 3. Izuku, Mama's home, yelled Azula. Immediately, all of Class 1A spun around, looking at Deku to see a look of sheer terror spread across his face. Suddenly, a black portal opened underneath Deku, and he fell into the darkness. Far across the USJ, Deku fell onto the ground. He looked up, seeing Azula smiling down at him. "Hello, Izuku," said Azula. Azula crouched down in front of Deku so that they were on the same height. Slowly, she ran the back of her hand down the side of his face, but Deku pulled away. Azula's smile vanished. She grabbed Deku by the mouth. "That's rude, Izuku. Where are your manners? You've grown rude from living with those peasants. Tell me, how is Mitsuki?" asked Azula. Deku's eyes went wide. How did she know? "I asked you a question," said Azula. Azula pushed Deku's head into the ground and got to her feet, dusting herself off. "Look at yourself, Izuku. Look how pathetic you've become," said Azula. Deku gritted his teeth and started getting to his feet. "I'm not afraid of you anymore, Mother," said Deku. Azula raised an eyebrow and looked at Deku up and down, seeing his hand shaking. A smirk spread across his face. Her face. "Oh, really? Well, if you're so fearless, why didn't you show me?" said Azula. Deku shot a blast out of his fist, but this was nothing to Azula. With a swift motion of her hand, the flames spun around her and shot back towards Deku. As it flew, Azula increased their power, turning them blue. The flames smashed into Deku, knocking him back and onto his knees. "You are outmatched, my darling Izuku. You should probably just run and hide like the other weaklings," said Azula. Deku flashed to look behind him, but as he did, flames shot out of Azula's fingers, encircling the two of them in a ring of fire. "Oh, it looks like that's not an option either. Perhaps some of your pathetic little friends could come help you. Oh, I forgot. You're all alone. Your classmates are scattered around the facility, hopefully being torn apart," said Azula. Azula walked towards Deku, blue flames dancing in her hand. "Like I said, you're outmatched," said Azula. Deku's heart was pounding harder and harder than ever before. Flashes of the pain he had suffered at his mother's hand flashed through his mind and grew stronger with each step she took. Deku frantically shot a massive blast forward, pushing him backwards. As he flew, he opened the flame circle and ran into the mountainous zone. Azula rolled her eyes and followed him. "Pathetic," said Azula. Deku hid behind a rock, panting and holding his head. "How can she be here? Why can't I get away?" asked Deku. Deku's hands were shaking like crazy, and his body was filling up with adrenaline. "I need to get away. I need to..." Deku was cut off when Azula turned the corner and looked straight into his eyes. "Come on, Izuku. You've never been a coward. Get up and fight," said Azula. Deku shot a blast after blast at Azula, but she effortlessly dodged them and sent them back at Deku. He was being pummeled into the mountain behind him. "Oh, Izuku, look at how pathetic you've become. You weren't anything special to begin with, but come on, this is just sad. Maybe I should pay Mitsuki a visit. It's been a while." Azula was cut off when Deku shot a fire blast point blank at her. However, with a wave of her hand, Azula dispersed the flame. She then grabbed Deku by the throat, slamming him into the wall. "Don't interrupt, Izuku. Mama is talking," said Azula. Deku choked and struggled to breathe as Azula pressed on his windpipe. Azula rolled her eyes and let go. Deku dropped to his knees, grabbing his throat. Azula grabbed his hair, dragging him to his feet. "Get up, Izuku. Why'd you have to be so weak? Even when I was your age, I could kill you with one hand. I guess you really are a failure," asked Azula. "Why are you so strong?" "We have the same quirk," said Deku. Azula spun around, backhanding Deku across the face, knocking him to the ground. "Don't you dare compare yourself to me. I was born strong. You were lucky to be born." When I met your father, I saw he had an interesting fire quirk. Although it wasn't strong, I thought if I fused it with mine, I could make the ultimate weapon. But look at you, crawling around in the dirt like the insect you are, said Azula. Azula put her boot on Deku's head, pushing his face into the dirt. She then pulled him to his knees and leaned down so she was right next to Deku's ear. You let me down, Izuku, and so had your father, said Azula. A smirk spread across Azula's face as blue flames wrapped around her fingers. I was so upset when he was mysteriously killed on that business trip, said Azula. She let out a cackling laugh as she stood up, backing away. She walked a few steps away and looked over the rest of the USJ. Why are you telling me this? Said Deku. Why not, Izuku? What are you going to do about it, weakling? Said Azula. Azula's laughter grew as sparks shot between her fingers. Deku's eyes went wide, and he knew exactly what that meant. Deku fired everything he had down at the ground, shooting himself into the air, high above the peak of the fake mountains in the USJ. Bakugo, who had just finished beating up some villains, saw Deku shooting through the air and was relieved. He immediately shot towards him to make sure he was okay. Before he got there, Deku was shot down by a bolt of lightning. Deku's limp body crashed to the ground, and Azula walked over, kicking him onto his back. Oh, wake up already. I deliberately used a low power shock because I know how fragile you are, said Azula. Azula grabbed Deku by the collar and dragged his limp body back the way they came. The fiery villain walked over to Kurogiri, who immediately opened the portal for her. Give back Deku, yelled Bakugo. Bakugo shot towards Azula, using the full power of One for All and his explosions. As if it meant nothing to her, she simply pointed a finger at Bakugo, and a bolt of lightning shot out. It smashed into his shoulder, knocking him to the ground, and by the time he got to his feet, Azula and Deku were gone. Far away, Deku was dropped on the floor of a dark bar. Welcome to my new home, Izuku, said Azula. Azula lightly kicked Deku, but was annoyed to find he was still unconscious. About 10 minutes later, Shigaraki fell onto the bar floor, covered in blood. I'm guessing you didn't kill All Might, asked Azula. Shigaraki staggered to his feet, using a bar stool as a crutch because he was so badly injured. Where were you? Asked Shigaraki. Personal errand, said Azula. Shigaraki lunged at Azula, ready to decay her, but Azula was quicker. She kicked the bar stool out from underneath him, knocking him to the ground, then held her flaming hand next to his throat. The TV suddenly switched on, and the voice of All for One played. Azula, please, don't kill Tomura. He doesn't know control. Tomura, I said to show our guest respect, said All for One. Azula put out the flames and got up. It was at this moment Shigaraki saw Deku tied to a chair in the corner. His hands and feet were bound in metal, and his mouth was covered. What is this hero trash doing here? Asked Shigaraki. Azula laughed, looking over at Deku. Oh please, he's no hero. Heroes are supposed to be strong. He should be the strongest fire user on the planet, but instead, he's just a weakling, said Azula. It was at this moment that Deku slowly opened his eyes. Azula saw this. A cruel smile spread across her face. Good, you're awake. It's time for some fun, said Azula. Deku's eyes went wide as he saw electricity sparking off his mother's fingers. He tried to fight his restraints, but they were too strong. Now, be a strong boy for Mummy, said Azula. Azula let out a bolt of lightning, hitting Deku's leg. The green-haired boy's muffled cries and his mother's crackling laughter filled the room as Azula repeatedly shocked him with powerful lightning. Come on, Izuku, I said be strong, said Azula. Deku gritted his teeth, but the pain was too much. Each shock felt like being stabbed with a red-hot knife. Far away, All Might, Bakugo and Nezu sat in a meeting room. You are sure you saw his mother take him? Asked Nezu. I'd recognize her anywhere. The look in those eyes, it isn't something you forget, said Bakugo. All Might slammed his fist on the table. Luckily he was in his small form, so he didn't destroy it. I should have been there, growled All Might. All Might, this isn't the time. Now, Bakugo, you told us to the police, didn't you? Asked Nezu. Yes, of course, sir, said the Bakugo. Good lad. You should probably head home. Feel free to have your mother call me so I can explain what happened, said Nezu. Nezu handed Bakugo a note with his phone number on it. A little later, Bakugo walked into his house. He didn't even remember walking home. His head was a mess from pain of his shoulder and worrying about Deku. His arm was mostly healed from Recovery Girl and was in a sling. When she heard the door, Mitsuki immediately ran into the hallway. Oh, I'm so glad you're okay. When I saw the news, I got so... Mitsuki stopped talking when she saw that Bakugo was alone. Where is Izuku? Asked Mitsuki. Bakugo didn't respond, but the look on his face told his mother exactly what she needed to know. She immediately fell to the floor and screamed in a combination of rage and sadness. They said in the news that a student had been taken, but they didn't say who, said Mitsuki. Bakugo took off his jacket, and his mother saw the sling hidden underneath. She immediately rushed over. What happened? Asked Mitsuki. I was hit by lightning, said Bakugo. Mitsuki's face dropped. She was there, wasn't she? She took Izuku, asked Mitsuki. Yeah, and did this when I tried to stop her, said Bakugo. Bakugo pulled down his shirt, showing his shoulder wrapped in bandages. Mitsuki pulled her son into a gentle hug as tears rolled down her face. She gritted her teeth and took a deep breath. Please be alive, Izuku, said Mitsuki. Far away, Deku sat tied to a chair unconscious. Are you done yet? You've been going for hours, asked Shigaraki. Not yet. Just a few more things, said Azula. If you don't mind me asking, but why are you torturing your own son? Asked Kurogiri. Azula smirked, sitting down next to Shigaraki. That is quite simple, really. It's a message, said Azula. What's the message? Asked Shigaraki. Well, if I'm willing to do that to my own flesh and blood, what do you think I'll do to my enemies? Said Azula. This sent chills up Shigaraki's back as he looked over at Deku's smoking body. Are you sure he's even still alive? Asked Shigaraki. Oh, don't worry. He's got a natural resistance to this kind of stuff. It's only when I really ramp up the power he's in danger. Like this. Azula shot a full power lightning bolt, hitting Deku in the thigh. He immediately woke up screaming. Good morning, sleepyhead. Did you enjoy your nap? Asked Azula. Azula jumped to her feet. Don't worry, Izuku, we're almost finished, said Azula. Azula held out her hand, and some blue flames began to form a pattern in her hand. Deku's eyes went wide as he saw the fiery symbol of his family's crest in front of him. Remember this, Izuku? This symbol that used to be feared in the criminal underworld, but thanks to All Might, that's no longer the case. I think it's time some of that fear returned, said Azula. Azula slammed her hand onto Deku's skin, burning the mark into his flesh. Deku screamed, but eventually fell silent when he passed out again. Azula lifted her hand, shaking the smoke away. Never forget who you are, and who you belong to, Izuku, said Azula. Azula walked over to the bar and picked up a pen and some paper. What are you doing now? Asked Shigaraki. Just the finishing touches. Do you have a stapler? Asked Azula. Meanwhile, All Might, Nezu and Detective Tsukauchi were in Nezu's office. This is a disaster. Detective, do you have any leads? Asked Nezu. The only thing we have is that this Nomu creature. It had multiple quirks, but when we did a DNA test, it came back as one person who had only had one quirk. In other words, he was given more, said the detective. That's not possible. He's dead. And what would he want with young Midoriya? Asked All Might. It is likely that Azula is just working with him. I believe her motives were to capture Midoriya, whilst this Shigaraki's motives were to kill you, said the detective. All Might bowed his head. I'm sorry, young Midoriya. All Might was cut off when alarms started going off. Intruder alert! Intruder alert! Said the computer. Nezu frantically typed at his keyboard, and the screen pulled up a map of the school. Intruder is at the front door, said the computer. The three of them immediately ran downstairs and threw the door open. All Might had buffed up The detective had pulled out his gun. However, there wasn't a villain. The three of them looked down to see a beaten and bloody Deku lying on their steps. "Young Midoriya," said All Might. All Might rushed over to him, checking for his pulse, confirming that he was still alive. All Might then saw a note stapled to Deku's chest. "I need some light. It's too dark to read it," said All Might. The detective ran over, shining his torch. "Take care at school. Love, Mum," said the note. End of chapter 3.